In my world there is music and good vibes and laughter and lovers, adventure and friendship. We know who we are.
Welcome to Be the Wellness Podcast, where we help you master your body, mind, and the experience of life through insightful conversation, interviews with experts and thought leaders, all with a side of marital banter and some good old-fashioned humor.
Yes, we are your hosts, Adam and Vanessa Lambert, and we're committed to helping you live life fully expressed physically, mentally, and experientially. Sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and join the conversation.
Hello, everybody. Adam and Vanessa Lambert back at you with another podcast from quarantine.
I feel like it's like one of those intros into a movie, and it's like a big stamp, quarantine. Yeah.
Extra big ass fries.
Yeah, exactly.
Brought to you by Carl's Jr.
We just recently watched Idiocracy. And to be honest, the movie is really funny, but it was also a little depressing.
Yeah.
It kind of makes me sad when I'm watching it and I'm just seeing like some things that obviously resonate with the direction we're going.
Just like, a little too
yeah,
accurate.
I'm like, it's kind of funny, but...
Yeah, it was funnier in 2006.
Right. It was funnier in 2006, and now it's a little bit more depressing.
Yeah. But, it's transitioning from comedy to documentary.
Right.
That's just how it goes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we have an awesome guest today, Jessie Golden, who is just really delightful. And I've been following her for a while on Instagram, and I also use some of her skincare products. And she's just really lovely. And I think you're going to feel that energy. Mm-hmm. We talk a lot about self-care and self-love and all those buzzwords that really do add up to, caring for yourself and making sure that you are making you a priority in your life, which there is no other time to do so than right now in #quarantine land.
Safer at home, yo.
Safer at home. That's right. So with that said, we have a meditation challenge, brand new meditation challenge that's getting served up on your messenger. So it'll actually send you a message every day,
Messenger.
Facebook or Instagram, whichever one you prefer. And it'll serve you up a 10-minute guided meditation with binaural sound waves. So you can scroll down in the show notes, check it out. It's all about grounding and healing. So it works perfectly into everything we're talking about today with Jessie, and really into everything that, we're up against right now. Is really staying grounded, really practicing these tools that are going to help us not only just survive this time, but really thrive and, come into our light, come deeper into our fullest expression, even in the face of this adversity that we're all up against.
Mm-hmm.
So scroll down, check it out, and let's get to Jessie. Jessie is a beautiful, amazing holistic health practitioner. She's a Hatha yoga teacher. She's an author and a model. She's always gravitated towards Mother Nature, spirituality, holistic healing, always searching and striving for authentic alternative ways to live. And we'll talk about this a bit in the podcast. Jessie was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis in her 20s. And, obviously that's a difficult diagnosis to get at such a young age, but it really spurred her on to dive deeper into her own journey, her own health, her own spirituality, and really her own commitment to what it means to love herself fully. And her line of products, the Golden Secrets, are really, I would say they're really an offshoot, a creation of this energy that Jessie holds. And you really feel it when you're connecting with her or you're connecting with her message, that there really is this sense of deep care and a deep sense of gratitude and self-love that comes along with her message. And so I've really been attracted to her and her products. I've been using them, and I think you're going to really love this conversation with her.
And we're live. Welcome to the podcast, Jessie.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. It's so exciting to meet virtually. Even though technically we live in the same town, we're just going to meet virtually instead.
I know. I love that. I love that you guys are in Venice.
So, I'm not sure. I was trying to figure out how you came across my radar, but the only thing that I could summon into my memory was seeing this really beautiful video of you applying one of your amazing skin oils on your face, and you were doing like this really beautiful skin treatment. And it was like, I'm watching you do this treatment on your skin, and it was just like, I couldn't help but just stop and watch it. It's like, it was like one of these things that just draws you in. And, from that time, I started following you and really just learning more about your story. And, obviously you have such a magnetic, energy, but you have such an interesting backstory. So I want to just start there with a little bit of your backstory and really how you started this journey towards natural health and wellness.
Thank you so much for the sweet words.
Yeah, of course.
My story started really young. At 11, I became a vegetarian, which was so weird. Which I need to preface, I'm no longer a vegetarian, but when I was 11, I became a vegetarian, joined PETA. I was I jokingly say, like the annoying vegans that are on Instagram right now. But I was like that in the 90s in Chicago, which was so weird. Like my grandmother literally was like, "You're going to die if you don't eat meat."
Yeah.
So I was just an unusual kid, but that's kind of where it started, where I started making the connection between what I was eating and how I was feeling and animals and all of that stuff. And then that carried on. I had a cousin who I owe a lot of seed planting to. She was a yoga teacher. She taught me about essential oils. She was kind of like your modern day witch, teaching me all these things. And I was just in awe of her. And then that kind of all turned into me becoming a yoga teacher. And when I got pregnant with my son, I decided to have him at home naturally. So I did that whole route. So just kind of setting the stage that I was always really health conscious. I was sitting at the Erewhon Tonic Bar when it was Ron's Tea Garden years before anybody went to Erewhon, and drinking reishi mushroom, probably too much. And, so I was always kind of on the forefront of like anything that was new and healthy, and gravitated towards that, which was so crazy because when my son was 4, I got diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. And it was so crazy because in the eyes of so many, I was the epitome of health. Mm-hmm. And up to that point, I really thought I was bulletproof. Mm-hmm. So that kind of changed my entire way of doing things. I went from pushing through things to pausing and listening to my body. And eventually I became a holistic health practitioner, not to necessarily become a holistic health practitioner, but I just wanted to learn more. People with chronic disease, especially I got diagnosed 11 years ago. It was before Instagram. Nobody was talking about autoimmune disease, especially a 29-year-old. Rheumatoid arthritis was considered an old person's disease. And there wasn't that many, nobody was talking about it. So, that's kind of where everything really started. And
Did you have like, what were the symptoms, or like how did that occur for you? Were you all of a sudden just like joints flared and tons of pain, or like what was actually the process of getting that diagnosis?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think I was undiagnosed for a really long time for a number of reasons. I was a trained ballerina, so I was taught to literally ignore every signal in my body. Yeah. And being in pain, any athlete knows, like, it's just, it's normal to be in pain. So I really didn't have a good barometer for what was normal and what wasn't. I was used to waking up sore. And then when I had my son, I was a single mother, and I breastfed him basically until I got diagnosed for a really long time. So I always had an excuse for why I was tired and not feeling my best. And I always thought that I could just get through it. I think a lot of people, especially strong-willed people, ignore all those little whispers and signals and think, well, if I just keep pushing through, I'll come out the other end. But eventually my body was like, I'm going to make you bedridden, so you have no choice but to listen. And so I was kind of forced to listen. And honestly, looking back, it was really the only way that I was going to do all the stuff that I needed to do to be where I am right now.
Yeah, definitely. Right. Your trauma is your dharma, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
It's really interesting to me because I feel like a lot of your story I relate to. I was the same at about 10 or 11, decided to be a vegetarian in an Italian family.
Oh.
And I think it's a very common kind of first step for a lot of folks who are seeking out health, right? Because you're trying to distill the information, especially then what was available. And it seems like that's kind of the right step to take. And then, I'm no longer a vegetarian as well, because again, I don't think it's the healthiest for my body, but I think it's a really common sort of first step for folks into their foray into health. And I'm curious if you think that, that time of, kind of not eating as much meat or not eating meat, do you think that exacerbated your condition? Because I know obviously a lot of autoimmune difficulties come from maybe a grain allergy or, having some allergies to certain foods that can trigger that autoimmune condition. So do you attribute those choices at all? Or do you think it's just kind of was always dormant there and probably going to express at some point?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're exactly right. I feel like people are definitely predisposed, and when it comes out or if it comes out depends on your lifestyle. And I'm still figuring out the diet thing. And I think that was a huge lesson for me, and it continues to be an evolving lesson. And it's kind of why I really stray from talking about it anymore, like on Instagram or expressing my opinions, because I just want to be open and be able to change my opinion on things based on how my body feels and what's happening in the world. So, I feel like, I feel like more than anything, it was more traumatic events that happened in my life that were triggers than diet. I think stress is a huge factor, and hormone shifts are huge factors. More women get rheumatoid arthritis after they have their first child. And more women in general get rheumatoid arthritis, but more women after they have their first child. So I feel like there's a hormonal shift. I mean, there's definitely, you have to look at the whole thing, and diet has something to do with it. But I have literally tried every single diet and every single thing, and have been a guinea pig for the last 11 years. And I still don't feel like I have it figured out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like you said, stress and hormones, and those two things seem to be inextricably intertwined anyway. But man, that the stress trigger is just like the single biggest variable in all of this. I mean, we see that in athletes, in 85-year-old stay-at-home old people. You know what I mean? It's like across the board. The one thing, like, hey, well, so what else is going on? How well are you sleeping? Like, how is all of this? Oh, well, I don't sleep. And, I just found out that my, great grandchild got into Harvard, and I promised to pay for it. You know what I mean? Like, you just never know what the situation is. And man, that stuff just really starts to add up.
Yeah. I feel like you can have whatever everyone's opinion of a clean diet is different these days, but you could have the cleanest diet. And if you don't know how to manage your stress, or something awful happens in your life and you don't know how to deal with it, the diet goes out the door. But vice versa, if your life is great and you have a great mindset and everything is moving smoothly and you know how to manage your stress, like there's been times where I've been in remission where I've said, like, I'm in a good place right now. I could eat popcorn. I could drink alcohol. I could do whatever the heck I want. Like, and it's true. And, my diet really had nothing to do with it when I was in a really good place. So it's really interesting. There's so many different factors that come into play. And people living with autoimmune disease, they're like these barometers, just walking around these barometers, and they feel everything so much more than an average person. So
Hmm.
we really have to be, we're just more sensitive. So we have to, I always say that people living with autoimmune disease, some of us are the healthiest in the world because we have to be. I'm constantly checking myself, and it's, my health is a full-time job. It's like, it's another
Right.
full-time job. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true, right? And it's kind of interesting to think about that just as sort of a group of people. Like maybe if, folks who do get autoimmune are more sensitive, like really maybe you do feel things more deeply, or like, you really are sensitive to what's around you, what's inside of you, all of those things. And it's kind of like that, what came first, the chicken or the egg thing, right? Like, were you that way? And that's, part of the autoimmune, or was it, the autoimmune expressed that hypersensitivity to things? I don't know. For you, what does it feel like? Does it feel like they came hand in hand?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked a lot about in the past, not recently, but like empaths and empathy, and like how I feel like there's definitely a connection with autoimmune disease. And even some of the clients that I've had, there's a lot of similar characteristic traits, where they're natural healers. They take on other people's energy. They don't necessarily know how to transmute that energy. So it ends up stagnant in the body, and it shows up in these different ways, through disease. So that was a huge practice for me, was putting up boundaries and setting boundaries for the people in my life, and self-love, which was huge. I kind of always confused confidence with self-love when I was younger. And through this dis-ease, I learned a lot about self-love, and that's kind of why I tried to put all of that into my skincare. So I'm kind of crossing paths here, but it all goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
So my skincare, every product comes with an affirmation card to recite affirmations of self-love while you're applying the product. So the product becomes the tool to instill these self-love rituals. And that was a huge thing for me when I was healing, when I originally got diagnosed, was noticing the self-criticism, the patterns, and who I was allowing in my life, and all of these things, and really looking into all of those other aspects outside of diet and managing stress and stuff.
I think that is such an interesting insight, right? So, and I'm curious, like, two-part question. I'll let you get to the first part first. Is like, what was that the intent, right? When you created your skincare, you're like, look, I know that we need some way of routinely, whether it's through mantra or affirmation or whatever approach, we need something that we're doing daily to make this happen. What's something that I do daily? Oh, moisturizer, or you know what I mean, or whatever my skincare regimen is.
Yeah.
Was that your idea to do that, or did it just kind of morph into that?
So my company was a accidental business, I say. I started making products, essential oils, in high school, and I'd never used like perfumes or anything like that. So I've always had this scent, this perfume that I've been wearing literally since I was 15. And everybody has always asked me, where can they get it? Or, what's that scent? What are you wearing? People would say, what's your golden secret? What is it? They literally gave me the name. And for years I held this thing sacred, and I was like, I don't want to share. Like, I didn't want people smelling like me. I was just like, this is weird. And I had a blog called The Golden Secrets, where I just shared regular health and beauty and yoga and stuff like that. And my friend, who was a really successful businessman, he said, why don't you package that stuff and put it on your website? And I really thought it was the weirdest idea. One, this was something so sacred to me. I didn't want people to smell like me. And I really didn't think anybody was going to care to smell like me. And in the same sense, it was like, this is just so weird. But then when I thought about it, I thought, I've had this little roller ball of essential oils in my purse for the last decade of my life. And as ridiculous as it is, it has helped me so much. It's always with me throughout my day. I reach in my purse, I put it on. It brings me right to the present moment. And I've always kind of said my own affirmations, maybe not the ones that are on the card today, but it was always a moment to bring me back into my body and kind of reset whatever it was that I was doing. And so that's kind of where the whole affirmation stemmed from. But on top of that, I modeled my entire life, and I was used to selling beauty products that were so one-dimensional and superficial, and there was no story behind it. And I was literally just paid to sell something that I actually never used, and for me, everything that I was making for myself was so sacred to me. And I thought, this has to be deeper than just, here, this is going to make you have beautiful skin. I just felt like there had to be more substance to it. And affirmation and intention had done so well for me. So I thought, this is such a great opportunity to make it go beyond the skin and really create everlasting beauty from within.
I love it. No, and I mean, it's truly like I'm that was so beautifully said. And it's honestly what drew me to you, is that you could feel it like that. And I think this is what I was alluding to when I talked about seeing the video of you. It was more than just what was happening on your skin. It was the energy, the embodiment of that sacred beauty and of just like real self-care and nurturing. And I think that there's such a longing for that right now. And it's so easy to tell when it's inauthentic. There's so many products that are marketed towards us and so many things out there that, that can catch our eye or that we can see, but there's a difference when it resonates at a deeper level. And that's just what I felt. And I've been using your products now, I don't know, over the last 6 months or so. Yeah. Yeah. And I love them. And I have the little wand, like the little,
the little tool.
Kind. Yeah. And it's, one of the videos, I think is the video I saw of you were putting the oil on with it. And it just reminds me to like take a moment. Don't just, put the oil on my hand and slap it on my face. Like to take a moment to really think about, what is this thing that I'm putting on my skin? How does it feel to actually take time to care for myself? How does it feel to really be in the presence of like loving yourself? And it really is true. And this is how we should be relating to our products and to the way that we live life. And, you have this ritual about the way you're doing it. And so I want to talk about rituals in general, because, Adam and I have talked about this in the past, how as humans, I think we're really longing for ritual these days. And obviously you've created your products with that sense of ritual, but I want to talk about some of your other rituals that you have in life that bring you to that place, that presence, and that feeling of self-care. What are some of your favorite ways to really, ritualize your life?
Yeah. Such a great question. It's so interesting. I just had a conversation with somebody, the other day, and we were talking about juicing, and she was complaining how difficult it is to actually wake up in the morning and wash the vegetables and everything. And I shared with her that my goal for probably since motherhood is to make the common daily chores a ritual. And you can really do that by just bringing mindfulness into anything that you do. So washing the dishes can be a ritual. Making your juice can be a ritual. Doing the laundry can be a ritual. So I love like shifting my perspective on things. And instead of looking at it like, oh, I have to do this, like this chore that I really don't enjoy. If you just spin it a little bit and bring mindfulness into it. And sometimes I'll play little games with myself, like when I'm doing the dishes, I say things I'm grateful for. I start with the alphabet. I'll start with something that starts with A, and I have to just like list all these things that I'm grateful for. Or like, whatever it is, I feel like you can just bring mindfulness into it. So I definitely do that. And then of course I do my beauty and self-care routine. I try and do that every single night. I do something special for myself. And then everything else is pretty, my coffee in the morning is a ritual.
Totally.
I make my coffee and I sit outside and I get some sun. I was just talking about this the other day, but I'm grateful that where I live, I can do this, but I like to sunbathe not wearing anything and let the sun shine where it normally doesn't. And I drink my coffee, and it's just like this thing, and it really sets the tone for my day. I get my vitamin D, and, I look up to the sky. I just feel like it's this whole little thing that I do. And then at night, sometimes I'll do the same thing with tea and a little CBD oil or something. But other than that, I feel like my day's pretty fluid, and there's just these mini rituals that happens all the time.
Yeah, that's an important thing. In coffee, it's funny. We talk about that. Actually, I think it's like the tagline on our coffee page on our website is like coffee is a ritual. And I mean, and it really is. And I think it's one of the things like when going through like, okay, well, what is it that makes people choose one kind of coffee over another and a this and over that and over this? And what I find is that there's people who tend to be much more tied to the way they make their coffee as opposed to the kind of coffee that it is or the brand of coffee, right? So it's like, oh, no, I'm a pour over person, or no, I'm a AeroPress or whatever. And it's because it's the ritual. It's the way that you do it. It's like I heat the water and I have this step and I have this step and I have this step. Yeah. And I've just always thought about that. And I don't know who said it, or somebody I think has said this, is that how you do anything is how you do everything, right?
Oh,
and it's
I say that all the time to my son.
God, and it's so true. Yeah, maybe it was you.
No.
Yeah, but it's so absolutely true. And I just think, we talk a lot about nutrition, right? And mindful eating and this concept of paying attention to the way that you're nourishing yourself, like bite by bite, and even preparing your food and everything. And it just totally makes sense to me that you would do the same with what you put on your skin, because at the end of the day, your skin is eating what you put on there, like to some degree, right? I mean, it's like you're nourishing it, right? That's the idea. So I just think it's really cool. I think it's such a cool way to to get more buy-in into the idea of affirmation as well. Because that's the other thing, is you can write sticky notes and put them on your mirror or whatever and begrudgingly recite, whatever mantra you have for the day. But there's just nothing like owning it and massaging that feeling into your skin. So
literally tactilely, like putting it into yourself. I love it.
Yeah.
And I tell people this is the most interesting part, because I remember when I first started saying these affirmations, I could hardly utter some of these words. So if you feel ridiculous and you don't believe what you're saying, like I am beautiful, I am worthy, I am radiant, if you feel awkward saying those things, it's a sure sign that you really need to say those things.
Right.
Because I always tell people the love you have for yourself sets the stage for everything thereafter. And I think the biggest thing that people want is love, from a partner. And I feel like the love you have for yourself really draws in a person that's going to treat you just as much as you love yourself. And it took me a really long time to learn that. But I think I nailed that one on the head. Thank goodness.
Yeah. You worked hard for it.
Yeah.
One is something that's coming up for me that I want to speak to, or that I think you could really speak well to, is this idea that people have about distinguishing self-love and being able to say those affirmations and making peace with this idea of being vain or having that disconnect, like that loving yourself is somehow vain, or saying those things are somehow vain. And I'm just curious, like, if you can speak to that.
That's really interesting. I think, I want to try and say this right, because it's two different things. I feel like a lot. Oh, this is interesting.
It's a good one though, because I think this is actually what stops some people from being able to step fully into the expression of that, is that there's this little story that people have about it being vain, or about it not being okay, or why should you be allowed to feel that way, or, like that little story 100%. That lives there. And I think it's so powerful to put that story in its place.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't own myself. I tell people I didn't come into myself until I became a mother. And then I really stepped into myself when I was diagnosed. And it's really interesting diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, it's really interesting because through those two huge life changes, I learned self-love. And prior to that, I really didn't feel as if I deserved it. And once I had gone through challenging things, and being a mother has been the greatest thing ever, but I was a single mother and there was challenging parts to it. But until I went through some like really challenging things, did I own myself. Like now, for instance, I can post pictures of myself in a vain way, which we all do nowadays with social media because it's just part of the game. And really own who I am because of what I've been through. I didn't have that when I was younger, you know, and it's interesting because it's really challenging, I think, for younger people right now, especially with social media and stuff. But I always tell my son, you have to have love for yourself that's unwavering from outside influences. So if somebody likes your picture, if somebody says something negative to you, no matter what is happening on the outside, the love you have for yourself has to be unwavering. And I wish that somebody told me that when I was younger, because I really felt like I had to kind of go through a bunch of awful things in order for it to be okay to be where I am now. You know, and now it's like, I'm like, you know what? I'm good. I've been through it. I'm all about grace and ease. Now I'm just like, let's just let everything flow. I'm good.
Amen.
Yeah.
I was literally just saying that to Adam this morning. I was like, let's just make all our choices from a place of what's easiest.
Yes. Right.
Like,
I feel like we've been like told that like we have to work really hard and like dig ourselves into the ground. It's like the American way to like have anything positive. And you know, we just have to shift our main mindset. A friend of mine said, you just have to raise the roof. And she literally just lifted her hands up and went like, raise the roof. And I was like, yeah, I'm just going to raise the roof. Like, I'm just going to
it's that easy.
Yeah. Sometimes it is, you know?
I love that. Yeah. You know, and it's one thing I just want to add to the little vanity, discussion too that really helped me, and I'll share with you, and maybe this will resonate with listeners out there, is I try to think of myself. I'm going to be 42 this year. And, you know, I'm like, in 20 years, 30 years, however many years it is, I'm going to look back on myself and think, oh, honey, you silly thing that you didn't just love how beautiful and effervescent and amazing you were, you know, and it's sneaking up on you. So like, there's no more time to waste in this story about not just celebrating your full glory now, because there is going to be a point when you look back and you're going to say, what a fool I was for not fully owning that moment and just rejoicing in how marvelous my physicality or my emotional body or all of it was at that time, if that makes sense, you know?
So beautifully said. I love that.
Yeah. And I mean, we're all running out of time.
the one non-renewable resource.
Yeah. No matter how much of it you have, it is going away.
Yeah.
So, no, I love this. This is awesome. And I love this conversation so much because I just think that with everything that's going on right now, everything's up for negotiation. Like, it feels to me like the world, nature, everything has given us an opportunity to stop and really think about how we want to engage with this experience that is our life. And I would love to hear from you what this time of quarantine and coronavirus and everything, what has it brought up for renegotiation for you?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you when you say the word opportunity. Since day one for me, as soon as we got put on quarantine, I was like, this is kind of a blessing. As a mom and working all the time, the one thing, talk about the non-renewable resource, like I'm always out of time. I feel like I'm always rushing somewhere to get somewhere. And I just felt like, wow, this is such a blessing to pause. I don't think in our lifetime we will ever have a nationwide pause like this. And I decided day one that I was going to absolutely make the best of it. spending time with my family, enjoying those morning coffees, just taking things a little bit slower, practicing all the self-care rituals that I'm usually rushing through or not having enough time for. It's just all those little things that we really get to hone in and see what is important,
Mm.
And
Yeah,
I feel
totally.
I feel like it's so important right now to keep our vibrations high, even though there's so much distraught and heartache and sadness happening. I feel like we need to, us light workers that are here, and we're so grateful. It's like if you have a roof over your head and you have food in your pantry, I don't want to hear about you complaining that you got to stay home. Like, we are so grateful and lucky because there's a lot of people that are not in that situation or don't have are not able to stay home because they're on the front lines or they're sick or their families are sick. So I think us doing the best that we can with this time and keeping our vibrations high is what's going to create this new world that I think we're about to step into.
Beautifully said. Yeah, absolutely. I was saying the other day, I feel like whoever you are right now and whoever, both dark and light, the volume's getting turned up so that you have an opportunity to really see yourself. And I think that, it's such an awesome opportunity for people to see what pieces of you are being turned up. And is that the volume button that you want? Or do you want, do you want to actually keep or toss some of these things? And I think it's just such an awesome opportunity to look at it and say, okay, here's who I am. What do I want to stand for and what do I want to create? And I think it is really an amazing opportunity for all of us.
It's like a worldwide Burning Man experience. Like, at some point you're going to break, maybe,
Except a lot of these people are alone. I think those are the people that are doing that. I notice, at least through social platforms, that are having the hard time, or the social butterflies that are alone and actually having to listen and deal with all these thoughts that they normally avoid by being out and being about and doing things. And, now all of a sudden they're stuck with themselves and their own thoughts. And a lot of people are actually having a really hard time dealing with that,
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. And what would you say to that person?
I always say the same thing. You got to get outside of yourself. I feel like a lot of people, I said this in a post the other day. I mean, this is unknown time. So I think it's normal for us to have days where we're sad or we feel like crying. We're going to have breakdowns, but we're also going to have these breakthrough moments. Like you were just saying, like, I think we're going to come out a lot stronger. But if you sit in that space too long, it's and you get too self-absorbed, it becomes really toxic. And the best thing to do is to think outside of yourself. And, whether it's calling your mom or like writing a letter to your grandmother or like even just sending a meme to a friend, just do something that gets you outside of your, what I call monkey brain.
Yeah.
Because that chatter can become, especially when you're isolated and you're by yourself, that can spiral into a deep depression and become this whole thing. So, getting outside of yourself, I always say, look past your own eyelashes, and then using this time, like one thing a day, even if it's one thing a day, like just, you don't have to, make banana bread and clean your closet every single day, but like, just do one thing. Like, you know what, today I'm going to find a cool free workout and try it. And, I don't know, just do one thing to I think it keeps the ball moving forward and it stops you from procrastinating and you actually feel good about yourself, Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like this is a collective gathering of all those moments where you're like, oh, I wish I had time to do X. And it's like, get that list out, that list of like, oh, I wish I had time, but I have to go to work or I have to go here. I have to do this. It's like, I know I have like 1,000, to 10,000 things on that list. So just get that list out and start chipping away at it. It's just like so awesome to have that time right now.
Yeah. There's this meme going around. It's actually kind of controversial. It said, I actually loved it, but it said, if you don't come out of this, like through breakthroughs and having a new skill and have your hustle harder, then you lack discipline, not time.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
then
saw
other
that.
people, somebody recently crossed all that out and was like, no, you're dealing with trauma and there's a global pandemic, and, kind of focusing on like, it's okay if you don't do anything. And that's what I'm saying. I think that space could be very dangerous, because if you sit in that space too long, that's when it becomes toxic and you can become very depressed. I feel like you can only sit in that space for a little bit of time.
No, I think that's really true. And I think actually it's been studied, right? That's like when people get put into isolation, and I mean, I'm trying to think what weird recess of my brain this lives in, but there's something, and why I would know this, I don't know, but this is somewhat normal for me. Like if you are a prisoner of war, like what you are trained to do is to develop a routine and do that routine every single day. It's like have the discipline to get up, do push-ups, brush your teeth, do like whatever it is. Like that's how you maintain your sanity and like some semblance of knowledge about how many days you've been there or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think I think it's really true. And when I saw that meme come around, I was reading through it and I'm like, yeah, no, I think that's right. It's like, man, what a time to practice discipline. And I mean, of course, I also understand the other side of it where they're trying, there are people who are 100% too hard on themselves when it comes to this kind of stuff, but I think there's room for both. And I kind of fall more into the camp of like the, Jocko Willink saying it's like discipline equals freedom, and at the end of the day, I think it's true. But yeah, I'm all for like developing that routine and just marching, because, man, this could be a really long time. Like we could, it's like this.
Yeah, you can only cry for so long.
More. Yeah,
you gotta do it.
Yeah. We had this man, he's amazing, Dr. Guy Winch, on our podcast. Gosh, it's been a couple years now, but he talks about emotional first aid and this thing about when you are lonely, your mind does start to play tricks on you. Like it starts to be difficult to kind of distinguish reality in a way. And especially when it comes to people's energy and feelings about you, like you start to think that you're more isolated or more lonely than you are. And if you just reach out, like you're saying, you just, get outside of yourself, reach out and make that point of contact, create that that connection to something. It has such a healing power to shore up that insecurity that can really start to seed itself and take over when you're in that loneliness story. So it totally makes sense to me what you're saying. Yeah.
It's like, I think he said at one point, he's like, if you are alone and you start having this feeling of like, why hasn't my friend John called me?
Right.
Like the thing to do is to call them immediately.
Exactly.
Because like you've just started that loop of weirdness going on. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So call John.
So call John.
That sounds like a bad trip episode. Like you start going into that. So why hasn't John called me? Lady Monkey Brain just goes for a ride.
Exactly.
Last time I talked to John, he did seem a little despondent. Yeah.
You have a whole story now.
So, okay. Couple quick questions. This because I love to just know this. What is a book that you love to gift, or something that you've read recently that you've recommended to people?
This is so bad. Talk about vanity. My own book.
Of course. Good. I'm glad I asked.
Yeah. And the only reason is like, people, when they reach out, before I had my book, it was like, oh, here's my blog, or I would send them a link or take the time to write like a whole paragraph to help them. And now I can go, here's my book. It's in my book. And it's just like such a blessing that it's all in a book.
Yeah.
Well, and also because it actually gives you a container to give it to them. And then from there, it really is their responsibility. They're not just actually trying to get a quick hit off of your energy and like, hey, can you give me some of your positive vibration? They actually have to take ownership of the information and start to instigate that change within.
You're so right. Yeah.
Because I mean, if anything that you realize in the wellness world is that you can get, hey, can I ask you a quick question all day long?
Yeah.
Like, can I just ask you this one thing? Or what do you think about this? And, it really does after a while for folks, like, you can't keep saying the same thing over and over, and then people kind of take it and then they don't really actually activate around it. So I can imagine having a book is like, here you go. Like, this
Here's
is a
the link.
perfect little, yeah.
Yeah.
Now activate.
Exactly. I love that.
That's awesome. Okay, so besides your book, what is another book that you really love or that has made a profound impact in your life?
Oh gosh, there's so many. All Women Are Healers is on my nightstand right now. Diane Stein, I think, is the author, and it's probably like 20 years old, and it's just one of those books that I go back to over and over and over, and it's just got all the old modalities in there: crystal therapy and herbs and homeopathy and all the witchy stuff.
I love it. I just wrote it down. I've got some of my best book recommendations from this question. So thanks for sharing. Yeah. Awesome. Well, this has been so wonderful. And, I really just invite folks to check out your stuff. It's so much more than skincare. It's so much more than just the topical experience. And that's what really drew me to you. And what, I think is really your offering, your unique offering, is that you feel that it's that essence of more than just, that skin deep. It's not just skin deep. It's like really all the way to the heart of the matter. So thank you so much for being with us. Is there anything that you would just love to leave the listeners with, just as parting words for this time in quarantine and this time of, this kind of transition that we're in the world? Anything that you would just love to leave people with, I would invite you to share that.
Yeah. I think getting back to being able to look outside of yourself. So I think this is the first time that the entire world is really realizing that what affects one of us will eventually affect all of us, and that we are actually all in this together. And we've never been so reliant on how we as individuals take care of ourselves, because it affects the whole. So I encourage people to imagine that the way that they're building their little home right now, that's going to actually create the entire world. So however you are living your life in your little home is going to be mirrored and create the entire world that we're about to step into.
Beautiful. It's like, what does he say? Who's the author about, if you want to change the world, make your bed?
Yeah.
Jordan Peterson. Yeah. Start with making your bed.
Right? Like it really is like what you're doing in your own home is the reflection outwardly. So I love that.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And it's such a great time to practice everything that we've learned right now. That's what it is.
Awesome. Awesome. So where can folks find you, the book, the skincare, all that good stuff?
I post pretty much every day on my Instagram, Jessie Golden, JessieGolden. And through there, I have all the links to my website, The Golden Secrets, and everything, book, all that stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Jessie. Thanks for making time and space for us.
Yeah, this was awesome.
Such a pleasure. I hope to see you guys in Venice this summer.
when we all emerge.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's it. I hope you guys got something out of that podcast. We certainly enjoyed talking with Jessie.
Yes.
And it's an uplifting conversation for us.
Yeah, it was perfect on this, what is it? Wednesday afternoon. The sun's out today, and we got the Golden Secrets. I mean, we've got the whole Golden Showdown going down today for us. So we hope you guys do too. We can't wait to see you next week. If you have yet to leave us a 5-star review, 'tis the moment. This is the moment. I mean, I know you are in quarantine right now. I know you're not driving. So scroll down halfway through your feed, click 5 stars, write a review, and, let us feel a little love from you and everybody And I don't know what I'm saying now. Fading off.
Fading off as you scroll, looking for the right words to say.
And let's just hear from A. O'Kane, who recently left a review. And she wrote, I really enjoy listening to the Be the Wellness podcast. Vanessa and Adam are so funny and enjoyable to listen to, and their guests are always really interesting. The Be the Wellness podcast is a great knowledge bank for anyone looking to learn how to be their most authentic and optimized self. Thank you, A. O'Kane. We appreciate you, and we hope that maybe we'll be reading your review next week. We'll see you then.
Bye.
Bye.